His shoes curled up at his toes into long points also. On his head he had a hat which was wide at the bottom and with a point at the top, and it was decorated with one large feather. Bu pointi de sivri olarak düşünün. This hat was covered with the white snow, and the goblin looked as if he had sat on the same tombstone, very comfortably, for 200 or 300 years. He was sitting perfectly still, and he was grinning at Gabriel Grubb with the kind of grin which only a goblin can make. "It was not the echoes," said the goblin. Gabriel Grubb was so frightened that he could not speak. "What are you doing here on Christmas Eve?" asked the goblin sternly. "I came to dig a grave, sir," said Gabriel Grubb. "What man wanders among graves and churchyards on such a night as this?" cried the goblin. "Gabriel Grubb, Gabriel Grubb," screamed a whole choir of voices that seemed to fill the churchyard. Gabriel looked round in terror. In terror, unutmayın, but he could see nothing. The goblin put out his tongue at the trembling Grubb, and then raising his voice he said, "And who then is our fair and just prize?" "Gabriel Grubb, Gabriel Grubb," shouted the wild voices again. The goblin grinned a broader grin than before as he said, "Well, what do you say about this?" The gravedigger tried very hard to speak. It's very curious, sir," he replied, half dead with fright. Gene güzel bir ifade bakın. Half dead, bu da tabii ölü anlamında değil. Half dead with fright. "But I think I'll go back and finish my work, sir, if you don't mind." "Oh, the grave, eh?" said the goblin. "Who digs graves on Christmas evening when other men are merry? And who enjoys doing it?" Again the mysterious voices shouted, "Gabriel Grubb, Gabriel Grubb." "I am sorry, but it seems my friends want you, Gabriel," said the goblin, putting out his tongue again. And a most amazing tongue it was. "Oh yes, it seems my friends want you, Gabriel. We know the man with the angry face and the terrible skull who came down the street tonight, looking at the children, with evil in his eyes." Gözlerindeki kötülük olarak alın. "We know the man who struck the boy, because he was jealous that the boy could be merry, and he could not. We know him, we know him." And then the goblin laughed a loud, high laugh, and threw his legs up in the air, and stood on his head, and rather on the point of his tall hat. Then he rolled over and over, right to the grave digger's feet, and there he sat with his legs crossed under him again. I must leave you now, sir," said the poor grave digger, making an effort to move. "Leave us," cried the goblin. "Gabriel Grubb is going to leave us. Ho, 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 ho." The goblin's cave. As the goblin laughed, hundreds of goblins rushed into the churchyard and began jumping over the tombstones, without ever stopping to rest or take a breath. The game became faster and faster as the goblins leaped faster and faster. They rolled and rolled over the place and flew like footballs over the tombstones. The grave digger's brain was beginning to go round and round as he watched the goblins. And then suddenly the goblin king jumped towards him, put his hand upon his collar, and sunk with him through the earth. They went down very fast, and when Gabriel Grubb had time to get back his breath, gene güzel bir ifade bakın, to get back his breath, yani kendini toparlayıp yeniden nefes almak anlamında düşünün, which had been taken away by the speed of his descent, he found that he was in what appeared to be a large cave. All around him were crowds of goblins, ugly and stern. Sitting on a raised seat in the middle of the room was his friend from the churchyard, the Goblin King. "It's cold tonight," said the king of the goblins. "Very cold. Let's have a cup of something warm to drink." At this command, half a dozen goblins hastily disappeared and presently returned with a cup of liquid fire. This they presented to the king. "Oh," cried the goblin, whose cheeks and throat shone as he swallowed the flame. "This warms one indeed. Bring another cup for Mr. Grubb." It was useless for the unfortunate grave digger to refuse it. One of the goblins held him while another poured the blazing liquid down his throat. Then the whole crowd of them roared with laughter as he coughed and choked and wiped away the tears which poured from his eyes after he had swallowed the burning drink. "And now," said the king, "show to this man of misery and anger a few of the pictures from our great collections." As the Goblin King said this, a thick cloud, which hid the far end of the cave, slowly disappeared. Behind it there was a small room with cheap furniture, but everything was neat and clean. A group of little children were playing round their mother's chair. Occasionally the mother rose and moved the curtains aside, opened, as if to see if someone was coming. At last there was a knock on the door. The mother opened it, and the children crowded round her and clapped their hands as their father entered. Then, as he sat down in his favorite chair, they climbed over his knees, and his wife sat beside him. All seemed to be happiness and comfort. Bazen bunu happy diyorlar ama to be happiness and comfort. But then the scene began to change. Now there was a small bedroom, and in it the youngest and most beautiful child lay dying. Even as Gabriel watched him with a feeling of interest, which he had never felt before, the child's brothers and sisters crowded round the little bed and lifted his tiny hand, so cold and heavy. But the touch of his cold hand frightened them, and in fear they looked at his little face, for they saw he was dead. "What do you think of that?" said the goblin, turning his large face towards Gabriel Grubb. Gabriel said something about it being very sad, and he looked a little ashamed as the goblin looked at him with angry eyes. "You miserable man," said the goblin, and there was the sound of hatred in his voice. "You!" He seemed to want to say something else, but anger stopped his words. So he lifted up his long, thin legs and gave Gabriel Grubb a good hard kick. Immediately after this, all the goblins started kicking him without any mercy, just to teach him a good hard lesson. Show him some more, said the king of the goblins. And again the cloud disappeared, and this time there was a beautiful country scene. The sun shone in a clear blue sky. The water gleamed in the sunlight. Bakın gene tasvir ne güzel ifadeler. Gleamed in the sunlight. And the trees looked greener. And the flowers looked prettier than they do in real life. The streams made a pleasant sound. Dereler bakın ne güzel sesler çıkarıyor. The branches moved gently in the light wind, which whispered amongst the leaves. And the birds sang in the trees. Bakın hep in edatları kullanıyor. Dikkat edin. The tiniest leaf, the smallest blade of grass, was filled with life. The ant came out to do her daily work. The butterfly danced in the warm sunlight. Millions of insects spread their shining wings, and men walked about, delighted with the beauty of the sea. You are a miserable man, said the king of the goblins, in an even greater rage than before. And again he kicked the grave digger, and again the goblins followed the example of their chief.